Before it was called Kenya, it was a land of many peoples, Kikuyu, Luo, Kalenjin, Maasai, living under the shadow of Mount Kenya. But when the British Empire arrived at the end of the 19th century, everything changed. The land was seized for white settlers. Africans were forced into hard labor, their traditions mocked, their freedom stolen. From the farms to the forests, whispers of rebellion began to rise. And at the heart of this awakening was one man, Jomo Kenyatta. Born in the early 1890s in Gatundu, young Kenyatta grew up among the Kikuyu people, learning the value of land and community. He became one of the first Africans to study abroad, in London, where he spoke for his people at global conferences. He told the British, "We want self-government. We want our land back." But back home, British settlers weren't ready to listen. They called Kenyatta a dreamer. Yet his dream was about to spark a revolution. In the early 1950s, deep in the forests of Mount Kenya, a movement was born, the Mau Mau. They were not soldiers of a nation. They were peasants, farmers, and workers who had lost everything. Under the cry "Land and Freedom," they took oaths, sharpened machetes, and waged guerrilla war against the colonial government. The British called them savages. But to the people, they were heroes. As the war spread, the British declared a state of emergency in 1952. Thousands were arrested. Villages were burned. And among those accused of leading the rebellion was Jomo Kenyatta. In a heavily guarded courtroom in Kapenguria, Kenyatta stood trial for managing the Mau Mau. The evidence was weak, but the verdict was predetermined. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison, then kept under house arrest for even longer. But while he was silenced, the movement grew louder. The world began to question British rule in Kenya. The price of empire was becoming too heavy to hide. By the early 1960s, the tide had turned. Britain, weakened and weary of war, began granting independence across Africa. And in Kenya, the cry for freedom could no longer be denied. In 1963, Kenya became independent, and the man once branded a rebel, Jomo Kenyatta, became its first prime minister and later its first president. But even in victory, new challenges arose. How could a land of many tribes become one nation? How could unity replace the scars of war? Kenyatta often said, "Our children must learn that freedom is not free. It is a flame that must be protected by all." Jomo Kenyatta died in 1978, but his dream of a free and united Kenya lives on. From the blood of the Mau Mau to the pride of Nairobi, his story remains a reminder. That independence is not just the end of chains, but the beginning of responsibility. Because as the people of Kenya learned, the chains were broken, but unity was the hardest victory. Subscribe for more African history stories every week.